My name is Velma, 32 years old. The moment I stepped through my parents' front door, I knew something was wrong. The air inside the house felt heavier than the cool twilight I'd just walked out of, as if the walls themselves were bracing for a storm. My mother's smile stretched wider than it ever had to, a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. My father's handshake was firm, almost staged, like a salesman forcing conviction into his pitch. And then there was my sister, Laurel. She practically vibrated at the edge of the foyer, eyes flicking between our parents with a glimmer I knew too well, the same glimmer she had when she was a child hiding pranks under couch cushions. "Velma, honey, so glad you could make it." Mom's hand pressed against the small of my back with an insistence that felt more like steering than affection. The dining room gleamed, prepared with theatrical precision. China plates I hadn't seen in years, crystal glasses that usually stayed boxed in the hutch, and a centerpiece of fresh lilies whose sweet perfume was too strong, almost suffocating. This wasn't an ordinary Sunday dinner. This was staged. Laurel took her seat across from me, her lips curled into a knowing smile that made my stomach knot. Dad carved the roast with a little too much performance, each slice deliberate, as if he were preparing for applause. Mom moved dishes around with the grace of a hostess at a gala, not the casual bustle of a family meal. It was then that I saw it. A manila folder, edges slightly bent, tucked neatly by Dad's plate, hidden under the fold of his napkin. My pulse stuttered. That wasn't a family photo album or church program. That was paperwork. "So," Mom began, her voice too bright, "how's the clinic? Still keeping those impossible hours?" "Business is good." I kept my words clipped, non-committal, watching Dad's eyes dart toward the folder like a reflex he couldn't control. Laurel let out a soft laugh. "All those patients, but such a cramped waiting room. Someone really needs to give you a hand with management." The smile, the folder, the brittle cheer, all of it clicked. I knew what was coming, though I wished I didn't. Dad set his fork down with a deliberate clink. The sound cracked through the perfect tableau of porcelain and silver. "Velma, we've been thinking about the future of your clinic." I froze mid-bite. Roast beef turned to sawdust in my mouth. Mom smoothed her napkin, sliding seamlessly into his rhythm. "Family businesses need family management, dear. Your father and I have been talking about how to keep your practice strong for the long term." "It's not a family business," I said carefully, though the edge in my voice was sharper than I intended. "With our support it is," Dad countered, finally pulling the folder closer. "And now Laurel has an excellent proposal." Laurel straightened, her eyes glinting with triumph. "I've drawn up a plan to become your practice manager. I'd handle the boring paperwork while you focus on patients." Her tone oozed confidence, as if she'd already been hired. "All I'd ask is a 25% profit share. More than fair, considering the growth I'll bring." The room tilted. My heart pounded against my ribs. This wasn't a dinner. This was an ambush. Memories slammed into me, unbidden. Eating ramen in a shoebox apartment while paying off tuition, pulling double shifts at the hospital cafeteria so Laurel could glide through her freshman year debt-free, collapsing on a treatment table because rent and insurance left nothing for a bed of my own. I had built everything brick by brick, with bloodshot eyes and trembling hands, and now my family was framing it as theirs. "I already have a clinic manager," I said, surprised at the steadiness in my own voice. Mom waved a dismissive hand. "But Laurel's the real people person. Remember at your clinic opening? Dr. Wilson couldn't stop talking to her. He barely noticed you." I remembered. I also remembered Dad angling the camera. So Laurel stood in the center of my graduation photos, and the way patients had complained after Laurel's summer help at the front desk left them double booked or turned away. "May I see what you've prepared?" I asked, nodding at the folder. Dad slid it across the table, smugness etched into every line of his face. "It's already been drawn up by my attorney. Just needs your signature." "I can start tomorrow," Laurel added, practically clapping her hands. "I've even got ideas for redecorating your office." The walls of the dining room pressed closer. My family thought I was trapped, cornered by crystal glasses and roast beef. They had no idea I'd been waiting for this moment. I set my water glass down with precision, its rim kissing the coaster in silence. Slowly, deliberately, I reached for the leather portfolio I'd tucked beside my chair. Its weight was solid, grounding. I had brought it tonight for exactly this reason. Dad's confident smile flickered as the metallic click of my portfolio's lock echoed across the table like a gunshot. "What's this?" he asked, his voice betraying a tremor he couldn't quite mask. I placed the documents on the table, aligning them with the kind of precision I used in treatment plans. "Before we discuss anything further," I said, my voice cool but firm, "there's something you need to see." Laurel leaned forward, triumph shading into unease. "What are you talking about?" I slid the top page toward them, the logo of Colorado Healthcare Partners stamped boldly across the letterhead. 3 weeks ago, I signed a management services agreement with CHP. They'll handle all administrative operations for Healing Hands going forward. I tapped the highlighted section with one finger, and as of this agreement, no family members can be employed in management positions without unanimous board approval. Dad's face paled. Mom's lips parted in a silent protest. Laurel's triumphant smile cracked at the edges. "You did this on purpose," Laurel hissed. "I made a business decision," I replied evenly, locking eyes with her, one based on experience. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Mom fidgeted with her napkin. Dad's jaw clenched. Laurel's nails clicked against her wineglass like tiny hammers. In that silence, something shifted inside me. For the first time, I wasn't the child being overlooked or the student eating ramen to fund someone else's future. I was the one at the head of the table, and I held the receipts. I hadn't even opened the thicker folder yet, the one that documented every careless error Laurel had made, every dollar drained in family treatments. That would come soon enough. For now, I sat back, folded my hands, and let the weight of the truth settle around them. This wasn't their clinic. It never had been. And tonight, I would make sure they never forgot it. The silence after my announcement stretched so long I could hear the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My parents had spent weeks rehearsing their ambush, but nothing had prepared them for me to come armed with my own arsenal. Dad's jaw flexed, the tendons in his neck taut. "You can't make unilateral decisions like this without family input," he said finally, his voice lowering to that old, authoritative register. "I can," I replied, calm and deliberate, "because the clinic isn't a family business. It's mine." Laurel's cheeks flamed red. "So what? You're just cutting us out?" "Not cutting out," I corrected, sliding the second folder across the linen tablecloth, clarifying. The thickness of it spoke volumes before I even opened it. A leather-bound ledger filled with neatly tabbed sections, dates, and complaint forms, the very evidence of how helpful my sister had been. Dad's hand hovered over the cover, hesitant. "What is this supposed to prove?" I opened it for him. 15 scheduling errors, I said, turning pages so they could see the handwritten notes from patients. Double-booked treatment rooms, dozens of people left waiting for hours. 23 unauthorized discounts. I let my finger linger over one line. 8 of them to your sorority sisters, Laurel. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "They were just—" 31 billing code errors, I continued, ignoring the interruption, which almost triggered an insurance audit that would have cost me everything. Mom reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly. "Velma, honey, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." These weren't learning mistakes. My voice hardened. They were careless. They were entitled. And they were made by someone who thought rules didn't apply to her. Laurel's chair screeched against the hardwood as she shoved back slightly. "You're exaggerating. I was helping you, and this is how you repay me?" "You were helping yourself," I countered. "Because when patients complained, when staff stayed late fixing your mistakes, you were posting rooftop happy hours on Instagram. I don't need help like that." Dad bristled, shoulders squaring. "That's enough. You're embarrassing your sister." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes squarely. "She embarrassed herself. I'm just showing you the paper trail." The next section of the folder contained spreadsheets, color-coded by my accountant. I slid them forward slowly, deliberately, so each figure would land like a stone. $42,000, I said, in free treatments provided to this family over the last 3 years. I ticked them off on my fingers. Dad's rotator cuff rehabilitation, Mom's plantar fasciitis therapy, Laurel's massages before her beach vacations. Not one of you paid a dime. The silence was deafening. Dad's lips pressed into a thin line. Mom's eyes darted anywhere but the papers. Laurel's flush deepened, the earlier triumph draining out of her. "I was eating instant noodles," I continued, my voice steady but edged with fire, "to make my student loan payments while you all enjoyed free care. I worked hospital cafeteria shifts to pay Laurel's tuition because you said you couldn't afford both of us. I slept on treatment tables when rent and insurance drained my accounts. And through it all, I kept giving, because that's what family does, right? My throat tightened. But family doesn't turn around and demand a 25% cut of what I built with those sacrifices. Laurel's voice cracked, high and brittle. You're making it sound like we used you. I stared at her. You did. Her eyes darted to Mom, silently begging for backup. Mom swallowed, her carefully constructed hostess facade faltering. Sweetheart, maybe we could discuss a different arrangement. Less than 25%. Just some involvement. You know, we only want what's best for you. No. I pushed the ledger back toward me and closed it with a firm snap. What you want is control, and what's best for me is boundaries. Dad's fist clenched around his napkin, crumpling the linen into a hard knot. You've changed, Velma. Success has made you cold. No. I straightened in my chair, shoulders square. Success has made me visible, and you don't know what to do with a daughter you can't dismiss. The words hung between us like smoke, bitter and impossible to swallow. Laurel tried again, her voice breaking. We're family. You can't just shut us out. I took a deep breath, tasting the sharp tang of lilies in the air. I'm not shutting you out. I'm drawing a line. From now on, there will be no family involvement in the clinic. No management, no discounts. Every treatment is billed at standard rates. Family and business will no longer mix. Mom gasped softly, her hand flying to her throat. You can't mean that. I do. The strength in my voice surprised even me. Years of swallowed resentment had finally found their release, not in an explosion, but in a quiet, immovable certainty. I gathered my folders, sliding them into the leather portfolio with the same precision I used to arrange supplies before a patient session. Every motion calmed me, anchored me. When I stood, the chair legs scraped softly against the wood. I'm finished with dinner, I said, my tone final. I'll see myself out. Laurel's eyes glistened with tears she tried to blink away. You can't just leave. I can. I lifted the portfolio, surprised by how light it felt compared to the weight I'd carried for years. Behind me, Mom whispered, I never thought you'd put business before family. I paused at the doorway and turned, just once. I'm not putting business before family. I'm putting boundaries before exploitation. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Laurel's breath hitched into a sob. Dad muttered something under his breath. Mom pressed her napkin to her lips, eyes shining. But none of it pulled me back. I walked out into the night air, lungs filling with a breath that didn't feel heavy anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down at the message from my Clang. The night after that dinner, I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. The confrontation kept replaying in my head, not just what had been said, but everything that hadn't. Every slight, every dismissal, every moment where I had been invisible until someone needed something from me. And as memories churned, the past rose up like smoke from a long, smothered fire. I was 12 the year it became clear where I stood. My birthday fell on a Tuesday in April. I woke up to a math test I aced and a single card propped against my cereal bowl, signed, Love, Mom and Dad. No present, no cake waiting in the fridge, no balloons. They said they'd do something later. 2 weeks after, Laurel turned 10. She got a gleaming teal bicycle with a wicker basket and pink streamers on the handlebars. I stood on the porch while she circled the driveway, our parents clapping like she'd just won the Tour de France. Dad tossed me his camera. Velma, get a picture of your sister's big moment. I lifted the viewfinder, snapping shots of Laurel's hair streaming in sunlight, her triumphant grin, but inside a quiet ache lodged itself deep. I had circled bikes and catalogs for years. I had dreamed of that freedom. Instead, I was told I was the practical one, the child who always wanted books. That was the first time I realized being overlooked wasn't an accident. It was a role assigned to me. Years later, high school graduation, I stood at the podium, valedictorian speech in trembling hands, staring out over rows of parents beaming with pride for their children. My parents weren't there. When I spotted them slipping into seats at the very back, 7 minutes after my speech ended, Mom whispered, Traffic was terrible, but we're here for Laurel's dance recital tonight. You're coming, right? I smiled like it didn't matter, but it did. College brought more of the same. Dean's list certificates sat unopened on the kitchen counter at home. I sent money back when I could, working shifts at the cafeteria, so Laurel wouldn't have to juggle jobs during her first year. They praised me for being so responsible, while praising her for being so charming. By graduate school, the pattern was bone deep. I slept on borrowed couches, ate noodles night after night, poured every cent into tuition and rent. The day I graduated with my Doctor of Physical Therapy degree, I stood in cap and gown, cords draped across my shoulders, waiting for them to find me in the crowd. They did, but only after Laurel tugged off my cap and placed it on her own head, giggling as Dad snapped photos. "Just for fun," she said. But the pictures that got framed and displayed at home were of her, not me. "Book smarts don't build practices," Dad said later, returning my cap without looking at me. I smiled politely. I swallowed the ache, and I built anyway. Those early years of the clinic nearly broke me. Loan statements stacked on my desk like bricks, each number screaming louder than the last. $187,000. Rent, insurance, equipment, malpractice premiums. Every month, I stared at spreadsheets until my vision blurred. When banks turned me down for expansion loans, I didn't cry in front of them. I waited until I was alone, sitting at my desk in the dark, the rejection letters folded neatly into a drawer. Meanwhile, my parents co-signed it for Laurel's new car because she needed reliable transportation for interviews. I remember one night vividly. The clinic lights were off, the waiting room empty, the treatment tables lined up like silent witnesses. I curled up on one of them with a thin, patient blanket, too exhausted to drive home after 16 hours of back-to-back sessions. My stomach growled so loudly it startled me. I laughed, but it wasn't humor, it was survival. When the cleaning crew found me at dawn, still curled there with paperwork clutched in my hands, I wanted to vanish. But I stayed. I kept going. Because invisibility had taught me persistence. And persistence built walls where applause never came. 4 years later, Healing Hands had its first real space. 3 rooms I could call my own. I scraped together a small reception with secondhand furniture, but to me, it looked like a palace. I sent invitations to the family, hoping maybe this time would be different. They came, for 15 minutes, just enough for a quick glance. "It's nice," Mom said, her eyes already on her watch. "Like a real doctor's office." They left before the champagne toast, rushing off to Laurel's bridal shower dinner. I stood in the reception with my staff, 3 people who had believed in me when no one else did, and we raised plastic cups of sparkling cider. That picture sits on my desk to this day, not because it's glamorous, but because it's real. But the summer Laurel decided to help at the front desk nearly sank us. Patients left furious after hours of waiting. Forms piled up unprocessed. Discounts were handed out like candy. I found insurance claims shoved into drawers, weeks overdue. "They're just old people," she said when I confronted her. "They don't have anywhere important to be." The fury that surged through me was volcanic. But I didn't scream. I rolled up my sleeves, called every patient personally, apologized, rebuilt trust brick by brick. My staff stayed late, ordering pizza, chipping in because they believed in the mission. It was then I realized my real family was inside these clinic walls. One night, after Laurel's chaos had finally ebbed, I sat alone in my office. I looked at the framed license hanging crooked on the wall, the embossed seal shining under fluorescent light. I ran my fingers over it, whispering, "This is mine. No one can take it away." And yet, even then, the fear lingered. Because invisibility teaches you not just persistence, but vigilance. It warns you that shadows are always nearby, waiting for a chance to claim what you've built. That's why, at that Sunday dinner, I had come prepared. I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story again. I closed my eyes now, lying awake in the dark, and saw every moment stacked like dominoes. The birthday bike, the late arrivals, the missed ceremonies, the ramen nights, the patient blanket. They had made me invisible, but in that invisibility, I'd found the strength to become unshakable. The thought steadied me, but it also carried a warning. Because if history had taught me anything, it was this. My family wasn't finished trying. The morning after those sleepless hours, I unlocked the clinic door as sunlight crept across the parking lot. The space smelled faintly of disinfectant and eucalyptus oil, remnants of yesterday's patients. The world outside was ordinary, cars passing, joggers waving, but inside I felt the pulse of something extraordinary. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building. The first months were chaos laced with small miracles. I'd meet with patients from dawn until nightfall, then collapse at my desk with stacks of insurance forms that seemed designed to break me. Rejections came fast and merciless. Documentation insufficient. Codes mismatched. Claim denied. Each letter was a hammer to my spirit. One meeting still burns in my memory. A stern representative from Blue Shield sat across my desk, flipping through my latest submission. "Your documentation doesn't meet our standards," she said flatly. "We can't approve these claims." Something in me snapped. Instead of begging, I slid a thick folder across the desk. "These are revised protocols," I told her. "I spent 3 weeks aligning each treatment code with your manual. Cross-referenced, annotated, highlighted." Her brows rose. "You did this yourself?" Every night after patients left. For the first time, her voice softened. "Most providers don't bother. They just argue." She closed the folder slowly. "I'll approve this batch. All of it." 3 days later, a check arrived covering months of backlogged claims. I held it in trembling hands, tears threatening to spill. It wasn't just money. It was validation. Word spread. Physicians noticed my precision. Referrals trickled in, then surged. Within 6 months, Healing Hands recorded its first profitable month. I should have celebrated wildly, but instead I sat alone in the dark clinic, staring at the numbers on my screen, verifying them 3 times before allowing myself to believe. Then I laughed, a ragged, disbelieving laugh, because silence for once felt like power instead of abandonment. And I wasn't as alone as I thought. Ellie, my clinic manager, became my right hand. She had 30 years of healthcare experience and could have earned more elsewhere, but when a hospital dangled a lucrative offer, she tore it up in front of me. "They don't value people the way you do," she said, eyes fierce. "What you're building is different, special." Carlos, my lead therapist, rallied the team during Laurel's disastrous summer. When rescheduling chaos consumed us, he ordered pizza at midnight and said, "We've got this. You're sisters, but we're a team." His words branded themselves on my heart. Friday meetings turned into rituals. We gathered, therapists, receptionists, cleaning staff alike, sharing victories and frustrations. Every voice mattered. The contrast to my parents' table, where mine was drowned out or ignored, was stark. Here, I was heard. Those meetings birthed ideas. Carlos suggested themed exercise programs for seniors. Ellie pushed for partnerships with local gyms. And quietly, a seed planted in me. A scholarship fund for students like I had been. Bright, broke, overlooked. I didn't know then how deeply that seed would grow, but I held on to it. A reminder that invisibility could become soil, not a grave. The clinic's culture hardened into something unshakable. Patients sensed it. They lingered after sessions, not because they had to, but because they felt cared for. They brought cookies at Christmas, handwritten cards in July. An elderly woman named Mrs. Hoffman once pressed a wrinkled hand to mine and whispered, "You see me. That's rare." Her words pierced me deeper than she knew. All my life, I had longed to be seen. And here, in this modest clinic with secondhand furniture and walls painted on a shoestring budget, I finally was. But even as the clinic grew, I stayed vigilant, because whispers began to reach me. At a networking event, someone congratulated me on our family practice. At a church potluck, a neighbor asked when my father planned to retire from our clinic. Each time, my stomach twisted. My family's narrative was spreading faster than my own truth. I pretended to laugh it off, but at night, I lay awake imagining how Mom must be telling her friends. "So proud of Velma, our brilliant daughter. We've always been behind her." The lie was almost elegant in its ease. I realized then invisibility wasn't gone. It was shifting. My family wasn't ignoring me anymore. They were claiming me. And that frightened me more than absence ever had. Still, I pressed forward. We expanded from 3 rooms to 6, then 9. Each time, I fought tooth and nail with banks, insurers, landlords. Each time, we made it work. I kept my own office modest, secondhand desk, old chair, while investing in state-of-the-art equipment for patients. If anyone questioned the contrast, I just smiled. Patients deserve the best. I could manage with less. But inside, the contrast meant more. It was my private rebellion against the years when appearances mattered more than substance. My family had always polished their image for the world, while my efforts were invisible. Here, the reverse was true. My office was plain, but the care we delivered shone. The difference was everything. And yet, late at night, I couldn't shake the fear. What if they tried again? What if one day I walked into the waiting room and found Mom charming patients, Dad shaking hands with referrals, Laurel scribbling plans for marketing ideas? The thought made me nauseous. So I began documenting everything. Every treatment, every policy, every financial statement, meticulously organized. If they ever tried to lay claim again, I would have the receipts ready. One Friday, as staff lingered over coffee after our meeting, I caught myself staring at the crooked frame of my business license. The embossed seal glimmered under fluorescent light. I thought of the empty space beside it on the wall. One day I decided that space would hold the scholarship letter, proof that I had turned neglect into legacy. It was only later, when Mom's social media post reframed Healing Hands as a family business, that I realized how much I would need those receipts. Because the war hadn't ended at the dinner table, it had only shifted fronts. And I could already feel the storm gathering on the horizon. It started with a notification I wasn't supposed to see. Carol, my clinic manager, slid her phone across my desk one morning. On the screen was a Facebook post from my mother, a glossy photo from our clinic's opening day 3 years earlier. In the picture, Mom stood with her arm around me, smiling wide for the camera. The caption read, "So proud of our daughter, Velma's vision with Healing Hands Therapy." We've always believed in her healing touch. Family business, family values. Had proud mama, hashtag family business. The timestamp 20 minutes ago. I felt my stomach tighten. Family business. 2 words that rewrote everything. 2 words that erased the ramen nights, the loan rejections, the nights spent on a treatment table while they celebrated Laurel's new car. 2 words that made my life's work sound like a gift wrapped and handed to me by them. They've been posting things like this more often, Carol said gently. It's confusing people. Dr. Reynolds asked me last week why your dad contacted him about partnership opportunities. My blood ran cold. Dad had gone beyond bragging. He was networking in my name. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. A draft email glowed on the screen, rewritten 14 times. Each version was measured, professional, final. To my family, it began. As I've said before, Healing Hands is my professional domain. I am setting clear boundaries. No employment, no management, no discounted treatments, no claims of ownership. Our relationship as family remains separate from my career. If you wish to rebuild personal ties, I am open, but professional boundaries are not negotiable. My finger hovered over send. I thought of Mom's hashtags, of Dad's firm handshake at that dinner, of Laurel's triumphant smile fading into fury. Then I pressed the button. The next morning, Carol found me with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Reinforcements are cheminée, she said, setting one down. Then she pulled a folded note from her pocket. Your mother stopped by during lunch yesterday. When I told her you were at the Children's Hospital Clinic, she left this. The envelope bore my name in her perfect cursive. Inside, the paper was tear-stained, words written in looping script. We miss you. There are misunderstandings that need healing. Come home. Let's meet as a family. We can fix this, Velma. Please don't shut us out. At the bottom, Sunday, our house, dinner, like old times. I crumpled the letter slightly in my hand. Like old times. The phrase stung. Old times had never been equal. Old times had meant me forgotten while Laurel sparkled, me grinding while they celebrated, me bending until my spine nearly snapped. Carol watched me carefully. You don't have to go. I know. My voice was quiet. That's why I'll choose where we meet next time. Neutral ground. Not their house. Not my clinic. Somewhere they can't control the room. She nodded. Good. 2 days later, Laurel appeared in my waiting room during our busiest afternoon, waving a glossy folder of marketing ideas. She wore a dress too polished for spontaneity, her lipstick perfect. Mark, my front desk manager, followed protocol exactly, offered her a seat, called me, then returned to his work. I didn't interrupt my session. I didn't let her inside. By the time I walked out an hour later, she was gone. But the scent of her perfume lingered, cloying as lilies in a too-perfect dining room. That evening, I sat with Ellie, my mentor, over tea. She listened quietly as I recounted everything. Mom's posts, Dad's calls, Laurel's uninvited visit. "You're in an image war," Ellie said finally. "They couldn't take the clinic outright, so now they're trying to claim it publicly. And if enough people believe them, then truth won't matter," I finished. She nodded. "That's why you need documentation, evidence, a narrative of your own." I already had receipts, the complaint forms, the ledgers, the agreements, but Ellie was right. Evidence wasn't enough. I needed to control the story before they rewrote it entirely. Later that week, I noticed something unsettling. At our Friday staff meeting, as we gathered around donuts and coffee, I spotted a young woman in the waiting room. She was Laurel's friend, one of the sorority sisters who had once gotten unauthorized discounts. She sat with her phone angled toward us, camera light barely visible. Recording. A chill swept through me. What narrative would Laurel try to spin this time? That we were incompetent? That staff meetings were gossip sessions? I carried on as usual, but my mind churned. The battleground wasn't just family dinners anymore. It was social media feeds, whispered conversations at church, gossip at networking events. They weren't simply trying to interfere, they were trying to rebrand my life as theirs. That night, I stared again at the empty space on the wall beside my business license. One day, the scholarship letter would hang there, proof that I could create a legacy not through hashtags or appearances, but through action. But I also realized something else. Before I could hang that letter, before I could pour into the next generation, I had to defend what I'd built from those who claimed it without cost. The storm was shifting. I felt it in the weight of Mom's note, in Laurel's smile at the front desk, in the whispers that reached me from every corner of my professional circle. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about identity, about whose name would be remembered beside healing hands. And I knew my family. They weren't finished, not by a long shot. The Cornerstone Cafe smelled of roasted beans and warm cinnamon, a neutral place humming with quiet conversations and clinking mugs. I chose a table in the far corner, back to the wall, clear view of both entrances. Years of bracing for their ambushes had taught me to choose my ground carefully. I laid my leather portfolio in front of me, its weight steadying my breath. Inside were printed posts, emails, financial ledgers, everything I needed if this meeting spiraled. My coffee arrived, steam curling upward like the tension in my chest. Through the window, I spotted them crossing the parking lot, my father in a golf polo, shoulders squared like he was heading into negotiations, my mother fussing with her pearl necklace, smile already painted on. Laurel walked between them in heels too sharp for casual coffee, her stride confident but eyes darting nervously. They entered in coordinated cream and tan tones, a united front. The bell above the door chimed, and the moment they saw me, their expressions flickered. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's smile froze. Laurel's eyes narrowed at the sight of the portfolio. "Velma, honey." Mom bent to hug me, but I stayed seated. Her arms faltered, landing awkwardly on my shoulder before retreating. "This is cozy," Dad said, sliding into the chair across from me. "We'd have preferred dinner at home. Family matters should be discussed privately." "This isn't just a family matter." I tapped the portfolio with one finger. "This concerns my business." Laurel slid into the seat beside him, perfume overtaking the scent of coffee. She pushed a paper bag toward me. "We brought muffins from that bakery you like." I didn't touch it. The waitress appeared, took their orders, and left. Silence stretched until Dad leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. His voice dropped into the tone I knew from curfews and lectures. "Blood is thicker than water, Velma. Family stands together, especially in business." Mom reached for my wrist. "We've always been proud of you, sweetie. We tell everyone about our brilliant daughter, the doctor." "Physical therapist," I corrected. "Doctor of physical therapy," Laurel added quickly, surprising me with accuracy, before pulling a tablet from her purse. "Speaking of which, I realized I came on too strong last time, so I've drafted a new proposal." She swiped the screen toward me, bright images flashing. "Not management, consulting. 3 days a week. I'll handle social media, corporate outreach, boost referrals. It's a win-win." I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitter warmth steal me. "Before we discuss any proposals, there's something you should know." All three stilled. The Hendersons congratulated me at their anniversary party, asked when the rest of you had joined my practice. They were surprised when I told them you hadn't. Mom blinked. We never. I opened my portfolio, sliding out neatly organized papers, screenshots of Facebook posts, texts from the Wilsons about the family clinic, copies of Dad's outreach emails. You've been presenting Healing Hands as a family business. That ends today. Dad's face flushed, but his voice stayed level. Those were expressions of pride. Expressions that imply ownership, I countered. I pulled out another page, Dr. Reynolds' email. Why did your father contact me about partnership opportunities? The silence after was thick. You've been watching us, Laurel said, her voice sharp, as if I'd betrayed her. I've been paying attention, I answered, eyes steady. The same attention I gave while you told your sorority sisters they could get free treatments. The same attention I used to rebuild after your scheduling disasters. Dad slammed his palm lightly on the table. We're getting sidetracked. We're here to discuss Laurel's role. There will be no role, I said evenly. Not for Laurel, not for you, not for Mom. Mom's hand flew to her throat. After everything we've done for you? I drew out the spreadsheet, itemized free treatments over 3 years, $42,735 in total. Dad's rotator cuff therapy, Mom's plantar fasciitis sessions, Laurel's stress massages before beach vacations. And the loans I gave Laurel during my first 2 years of practice, when I could barely make rent, I added, sliding another sheet forward. $16,450. Still unpaid. Laurel's face twisted. You said those were gifts. I said we'd figure it out later, I reminded her. It's later. Dad's businessman mask cracked. You can't expect repayment after all you've what? My voice cut in, firm but calm. After you missed my doctoral hooding ceremony for Laurel's fundraiser? After you told Dr. Wilson I was playing at business until I found a husband? After you dismissed my clinic opening as just another job? I placed both palms flat on the table, grounding myself. These are my terms if you want any future relationship. First, my business is mine. No input, no suggestions, no contact with my colleagues. Second, all treatments are billed at standard rates. Third, no more describing yourselves as partners or owners. Mom's composure wavered. Real tears brimmed in her eyes. Not the rehearsed kind. You can't mean this. We're family. Family respects boundaries, I said softly. Family celebrates achievements instead of trying to claim them. Dad's voice dropped low, the truth slipping out before he could stop it. We never thought you'd actually succeed on your own. We were just trying to secure your future. There it was, the admission. Not belief, not pride. Just disbelief, now disguised as concern. Laurel's mask crumbled, raw envy spilling out. It's not fair. You get everything. The respect, the title, the clinic. What about me? I'm stuck in a cubicle while you play hero. Her words stung, but they also clarified. This wasn't just greed. It was desperation, resentment, longing for validation she thought she'd never get. I closed my portfolio with a decisive snap. I built this while supporting you all, financially, emotionally, when no one supported me. I'm not playing at anything, and I'm done being invisible. I stood, leaving exact change for my coffee. Behind me, Mom's quiet sobs mingled with Dad's harsh whisper to Laurel, chairs scraping as they shifted. But I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I walked forward without checking if they approved. 1 year after that cafe confrontation, I stood at the picture window of my expanded clinic. Afternoon light spilled across the Denver skyline, painting everything in shades of gold. The glass reflected my own figure, shoulders straighter, jaw softer, eyes less haunted. I hardly recognized the woman who once curled up on a treatment table with a patient blanket for warmth. Dr. Bennett, Melissa, my lead therapist, called from the hallway. Your 3 o'clock is ready. Mrs. Abernathy's final session. Perfect, I said, smiling. The waiting room bustled with energy. Comfortable chairs replaced the hand-me-downs. Framed community awards lined the walls beside my original business license, and patients chatted with staff like old friends. A year ago, new patients had trickled in hesitantly. Now, there was a 2-month waiting list. Mrs. Abernathy, a wiry woman in her 70s with eyes like bright marbles, beamed as I entered. There she is, the miracle worker herself. I laughed, setting her chart aside. The miracle was your dedication to those home exercises. Nonsense, she waved a hand. My grandson says you're the best in Denver, and that boy researches everything. As I guided her through stretches, I caught my reflection in the treatment room mirror. No more hunched shoulders. No more defensive posture. I stood taller now, grounded in my worth. When her session ended, I walked back to my office where 3 eager new graduates waited for their mentorship orientation. Their eyes gleamed with the same fire I once carried through endless nights of study. The most important thing I can teach you, I told them, perching on the edge of the conference table, is knowing your value. In this profession, you'll give constantly. Make sure what you're giving is respected. They nodded, scribbling notes as though I'd handed them a treasure. After they left, I opened the latest figures for our pro bono program. 15% of our practice now serve patients who couldn't afford care. A year ago, that percentage would have terrified me. Now it filled me with purpose. But the past had not stayed quiet. My email pinged with a message from a regulatory contact. An anonymous complaint had landed on their desk alleging billing improprieties at Healing Hands. I felt my chest tighten, then forced myself to breathe. I opened the file. The phrasing of the complaint was oddly formal, echoing the way my father spoke when he shifted into his business voice. Terms like questionable oversight and potential mismanagement of funds. I almost laughed. They had picked the wrong battlefield. If there was one area I had fortified with steel and stone, it was documentation. I forwarded the entire claims archive, every code cross-referenced, every protocol flawless. Within hours, the complaint was dismissed. Still, the timing gnawed at me. Who else but family would know to attack there? The next morning, Carol appeared in my doorway with 2 mugs of coffee. Your father tried contacting Denise again, she said, referring to my accountant. Charm first, then intimidation. She told him to stop or face harassment charges. I rubbed my temples. They're circling the drain. Each move weaker than the last, but still relentless. Carol hesitated. There's more. Your mother stopped by during lunch. Left this. Another envelope, my name in her looping cursive. I opened it slowly. We miss you. The garden doesn't bloom the same without you. Please, Velma, let's heal old wounds. Family dinner, our house, Sunday. Tears had stained the ink. The plea sounded genuine, but the location, always their house, always their terms, made my stomach twist. Carol laid a hand on the desk. You don't owe them your peace. I know, I whispered, but I also know they're not finished. That evening, I sifted through patient files before locking up. Through the glass wall of my office, I watched Meredith guide a stroke patient through slow, steady exercises. The man's trembling arms rose with determination, Meredith encouraging softly. The sight anchored me. This was why I endured. Not for family approval, not for reputation, but for healing that mattered. As the last patient left, I lingered in the quiet. The original Healing Hands sign, salvaged from our first cramped space, hung on my office wall. I touched the faded wood, remembering ramen nights and rejection letters. Now, 15 therapists carried the vision forward. Now, patients arrived from across the state. Now, my name was etched in something solid. And yet, the shadow remained. The complaint dismissed today might be a louder attack tomorrow. The note from Mom might be bait for another ambush. The image war wasn't over. I locked the door, portfolio under my arm. The night air smelled of rain and possibility. Above me, the mountains stood dark and immovable, reminding me of boundaries hard won. Still, deep inside, I felt the tremor of something coming. Something quieter, more dangerous. The kind of sabotage that didn't roar at a dinner table or brag on Facebook. The kind that slithered in silence, waiting to strike where it thought I was weakest. The letter arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, folded neatly into an official envelope from the State Regulatory Board. My receptionist handed it to me with wide eyes. "Looks serious," she whispered. I carried it into my office, heart steady but wary. The storm outside rattled against the windows as I slit the envelope open. Inside, the language was familiar. Anonymous complaint alleging questionable billing practices, potential conflicts of interest, requests for documentation. For a moment, I let my fingers rest on the page. Anonymous, they said. But the phrasing was too precise, the tone too polished. Questionable oversight. Potential mismanagement. Those were my father's phrases, the same words he had used at business dinners when talking about partners who didn't keep up. He thought he had found a crack in my armor. He didn't know I had spent years sealing every seam. By noon, I had compiled a digital folder. Every insurance claim, every treatment log, Every audit trail, cross-referenced and pristine. I sent it to the board with a cover letter so meticulous it bordered on surgical. By 3 o'clock, I received their reply. Complaint dismissed. No irregularities found. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The clinic hummed beyond my glass wall. Patients laughing, therapists guiding exercises, phones ringing with new referrals. We were thriving. And yet someone had tried to quietly slit the foundation from beneath us. I knew who. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my portfolio open, pages spread across the wood like battle maps. I highlighted patterns, compared timestamps. One PDF in the complaint file contained metadata, creation date, author tag. A name I recognized. One of Dad's longtime golf partners. My stomach clenched, not with fear, but with confirmation. He hadn't even filed it himself. He'd asked a friend to do it, cloaked in anonymity. The next morning, I drafted a letter, not to my family, but to their attorney. I attached the dismissed complaint, the metadata evidence, the screenshots of misleading social posts. My language was careful, cold, undeniable. Any further attempts to interfere with my professional reputation will be considered defamation and handled accordingly. I didn't send it immediately. Instead, I tucked it into the portfolio, ready if they escalated. Later that week, my mother appeared at the clinic unannounced, but this time she didn't demand or perform. She waited quietly in the reception area, hands folded around a worn canvas tote. I invited her into my office. She sat with her back straight, pearls absent, makeup minimal. Rain had dampened her hair at the edges. She looked smaller than I remembered. "I know about the complaint," I said softly before she spoke. Her shoulders slumped. "That wasn't me." "But it was Dad." She didn't deny it. Instead, tears welled. "He's afraid, not of you, but of what people will think. If we're not part of your success, what does that say about us? He's clinging to appearances." I stayed silent, letting the words settle. "I wanted to protect our image," she admitted, voice breaking. "But I see now that I was erasing yours. I'm sorry, Velma." For years, I had prayed for an apology like this, and yet hearing it now, I realized it didn't erase the ledger of absence. But it was something, a crack of light. I reached across the desk, resting my hand lightly over hers. "If you want to be part of this clinic, Mom, it can't be as an owner or a manager, but there is a way." Her eyes flicked up, wet and searching. "We host a community day twice a month. Free screenings, education, outreach. If you want to help, volunteer there. No photos, no hashtags, just service." She blinked, stunned. "You'd let me?" "I'd welcome you," I said firmly, on those terms. For the first time in years, her smile felt real, fragile, but real. When she left, I sat for a long time staring at the rain streaking the window. A tentative peace was possible with her. But with Dad, the saboteur's mask was too fresh in my mind. He hadn't just claimed credit. He had tried to destroy me quietly, surgically, in a way that could have ended everything. The thought chilled me, but it also sharpened my resolve. That night, I placed the unsent letter to his attorney back into my portfolio. It sat there like a loaded weapon, silent but ready. And in its shadow, I felt the shift of something new. This battle wasn't about family dinners or Facebook posts anymore. It was about legacy, about who would be remembered as the builder of healing hands. The storm outside finally broke, thunder rattling the clinic walls, and I knew, one way or another, the final confrontation was coming. The letter to my father's attorney sat in my portfolio for 2 weeks, unsent but heavy. Every time I opened the case, the envelope glared back at me, daring me to decide whether I wanted war or resolution. In the meantime, the clinic thrived. Our expanded treatment floor bustled with energy. Patients filled every room. Therapists collaborated with a rhythm that felt like music. And the scholarship fund I'd dreamed of for years finally launched. 2 students had been selected for the fall semester. Bright, hardworking, financially struggling. They reminded me of myself, but unlike me, they would never be invisible. The day their acceptance letters arrived, I hung copies on the wall beside my business license. The empty space I had stared at for years was finally filled. And yet, my phone buzzed constantly with new attempts from my family. Texts, voicemails, carefully worded emails. Laurel sent a message one night. "Miss you, big sis. Can we talk? Just us?" I didn't reply. Not yet. Then came the envelope, hand-delivered, not mailed. Inside was a formal letter on an attorney's letterhead. Not mine, theirs. My father's words dressed in legalese. We propose a mediation to resolve family misunderstandings, protect reputations, and secure long-term harmony. I laughed without humor. They still thought this was a negotiation. But I agreed, not because I expected them to change, but because I wanted closure. The mediation was held in a glass-walled conference room downtown. Neutral ground again, but less forgiving than a cafe. The attorney presided, pen poised like a referee's whistle. My parents sat on one side of the table, Laurel between them. My father's posture radiated practiced authority, my mother's hands trembled slightly, and Laurel looked both defiant and fragile. I opened my portfolio and laid out 3 folders. Before we begin, let me be clear. I am not here to share ownership of my clinic. I am here to establish boundaries. If those boundaries can be respected, then there is a path forward. The attorney nodded. Proceed. I slid the first folder across the table. Screenshots of misleading posts, copies of Dad's networking emails, the dismissed complaint file. These are the attempts you've made to misrepresent or sabotage my clinic. This ends now, publicly. I need a written statement from you both clarifying that Healing Hands is my business alone. No further claims of partnership or ownership. My father's lips tightened. That's extreme. It's necessary, I said evenly. The second folder held the ledger of unpaid debts, loans to Laurel, free treatments itemized. $59,185, I said. I'm not demanding repayment in full tomorrow, but I need acknowledgement, a plan, even small installments, something that shows accountability. Laurel's face crumpled. I don't have that kind of money. You have a new job, I reminded her. Start with $100 a month. It's not about the amount. It's about honoring what was given. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I was jealous, Velma. I thought if I could be part of your clinic, I'd matter. But I see now, I ruined things. For the first time, her words felt unvarnished. The third folder I didn't slide forward. Instead, I kept it beneath my hand. This one is simple, I said. Future. No involvement in clinic operations, staff, or patients. Ever. Business is mine. Family can only exist outside of it. If that's not acceptable, then there is nothing to discuss. The attorney looked at them. Do you accept these terms? Silence stretched. My mother's gaze shifted between me and my father. Finally, she spoke. I accept. I will remove the posts. I'll tell our friends the truth, and I'll volunteer at the community days, quietly, if you'll let me. Her voice cracked on the last words, but I believed her. Laurel nodded through tears. I'll repay what I can. I'll help with the scholarship fund if you'll let me. I need to do something good, something that isn't about me. All eyes turned to my father. He sat rigid, jaw clenched, the image of a man cornered by truth. Finally, he exhaled sharply. Fine, if this is what it takes, but don't expect me to apologize for wanting the best for this family. I held his gaze. Wanting the best isn't the same as taking it. The attorney recorded the terms, signatures were made, and the folders were gathered back into my portfolio. When I snapped it shut, the sound felt like the closing of a chapter. Weeks later, Mom showed up at a community day with a tote full of bottled water and homemade sandwiches. She didn't ask for photos. She simply handed out food, wiped down tables, and listened to patients' stories. For the first time, I saw her in service rather than in performance. Laurel sent me her first $100 payment with a handwritten note. One step at a time. I'm sorry. And my father? He stayed distant, polite but cool. A truce, not a reconciliation. Some wounds would need more time, or maybe they would never heal. One evening, after the last patient left, I stood alone in the treatment floor. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating every corner. 15 therapists worked here now, carrying forward the mission I had carved out of invisibility. On the wall, my business license hung beside the scholarship letters. A legacy built not on borrowed names, but on sweat, persistence, and unshakable boundaries. I thought back to the girl who once circled bikes and catalogs, the graduate who watched her sister wear her cap, the young woman who ate noodles to pay rent. She had longed to be seen, and now she was. Not because my family finally recognized me, but because I had learned to recognize myself. I closed the clinic for the night, stepping outside into the cool air. The mountains loomed steady against the horizon, timeless and immovable, like the boundaries I had drawn. For the first time, I felt not just free of their grip, but at peace. Because I knew now that healing wasn't only for my patients. It was for me, too.